Welcome back, everybody, on our continued study of the source field investigation, this great encyclopedic book by David Wilcock that we've been working through, and we are now going to commence talking about chapter 6, which is a chapter about the very far back history of the planet, way back to before the Egyptians, the prophecies that date back from those times. So that's chapter 6. Before we go on, I'd like to draw your attention to another great book that I bought a couple of years ago and read, and now resurrected from my library, and realized just how important this book is. It's just about as encyclopedic as David Wilcock's book. The book is called Life Force: The Scientific Basis on Energy Medicine, Healing, and Quantum Consciousness. So if you're really hungry for more knowledge, this is a great book to buy. It's done by a physicist called Claude Swanson in the States. So this is a great book, Life Force: The Scientific Basis. So we're going to start on chapter 6, which is about the history of, the early history of our civilization, weighing back to Mesopotamian times, which led on to the Egyptians and the pyramids. As the Earth spins on its axis in one direction, it slowly inscribes a circle going in the other. If you've ever watched a top spinning, you'll notice that it spins slowly. It leans slowly in a circular fashion, slowly in the opposite direction. So the Earth does this almost every 26,000 years. To be precise, 25,920 years is this cycle called the precession of the equinox. Precession means that movement of the Earth or of a top. And it has a cycle of almost 26,000 years. And it's described throughout many historical documents that was recognized way back with incredible precision back many thousands of years ago. So, and those years are divided into 12 equal periods of 2,160 years. Those are the 12 ages of the zodiac. So this is all mythological history, but yet may well have some scientific basis and relevance for us in our studies of the pyramids, which we're going to talk about a little later. So the precession of the equinox has played a very important part throughout history, and the various stages of evolution and development of all of the life forms on this planet. And in Roman mythology, they used certain stones to represent both the Earth with its spinning and its precession, and to represent also the pineal gland, which comes up over and over again in many of these mythologies, a stone representing the pineal gland. And if you remember from the last few times how the pineal is truly an inner eye. It's an all-seeing eye, where the rods and cones are facing inside the little cyst, which contains all of the calcite clear crystals that are piezoluminescent. So they receive images that are observed and monitored by our inner eye. So that's how, and when these piezoluminescent crystals are activated, we see the light. And then, for example, Kundalini Yoga, when the Kundalini energy rises up from the base or sacral chakra where it resides, and may be blocked there, then when it rises up through the various chakras, liberating each of the chakras, each of the energy centers, and coming up to the pineal gland, often people, Kundalini Yoga experts, report seeing light flashes of different colors. And one of the great authors about this, Muktananda, reported seeing blue light flashes in his inner eye. So the Roman coins also had depictions of the earth with a pole running through it, the pole between the north and south pole, like an axis. So that knowledge was available to early historians way back then. In Egyptian mythology, there was a stone called the Benben stone that had two birds, one on either side, which represented the mythological bird, the phoenix. The phoenix was the bird that was destroyed by fire, but rose again out of the fire and became alive, re-strengthened and re-empowered after a rebirth. And the phoenix is represented often as an eagle, another great bird. And these stones and the pineal and the phoenix represent, in fact, the transformation, the rebirth of humanity in general, and each of us in particular who are devoted to our own personal growth and to the opening and awakening of our pineal gland. And it's as above, so below. So what happens to us personally is a representation of what's happening to all of humanity. Now, there has been many predictions about a period of destruction and catastrophe, of war and famine, disease and eruption, earthquakes and tsunamis, tornadoes, and corruption, financial corruption, and financial depression, which is something we are seeing now to a great extent. So the question in our minds is this the beginning of this period of tribulation, which will be followed by a golden age in this changeover period from our one equinox to the next. So the question is, are we going through this right now? And certainly, recently, we have seen some very severe events, tsunamis and tornadoes that have never happened before in memory with such severity. So.
John, has this cycle actually come to an end recently?
Well, that's right. There was this prediction of December 2012, but there is another prediction for 2014. So this is a period, a window, in other words, from 2014 to July, from December 2012 to July 2014, that window during which I don't think we know what's happening. Are things going to get worse before they get better?
But is this the end of the 25 or 26,000?
Yes, it is. It is the end of this 25,920 year cycle. Yeah. The book of Revelations and many other great literature predict the tribulations, the tribulation period, and describe the 7 suns blazing on the earth, causing water shortages, drought, and floods. So is there 7 suns symbolic of something that's happening right now? I'm not aware of that, but maybe that's still to come, the 7 suns, or maybe the 7 disasters. Yeah. Edgar Cayce also made many predictions about this period of time, leading up to a golden age or a new earth, called Krita, K-R-I-T-A, in Hindu mythology, a period of prosperity and abundance, health and peace, with the appearance of a Messiah who could be one individual called the Kalki, K-A-L-K-I, could be one individual, or it could be symbolic of all of us, or many of us being messiahs, being highly enlightened beings who show a light for the rest of the planet, the rest of humanity. And these Kalki or Messiah-like individuals are predicted to have superhuman physical and mental abilities, with a body that is more accommodating to growth. Now we're seeing the appearance of the indigo children and the crystal children. So there are more and more bright, brilliant young people being born, or have been born for the last few decades actually, but more and more now, who are extremely bright and insightful and seem to have some psychic ability, more like a savant. Savants are those people who have supernormal, superhuman ability in a few limited dimensions of functioning. But this is about having a supernormal ability throughout the whole spectrum of human functioning.
I'm curious about something here, because alongside these abilities come more cases of autism or ADHD and this kind of stuff. Do you think this is all related?
It must be. I think it's the appearance of these narrowband capabilities through the broad spectrum of human abilities, and these abilities are appearing more and more bunched together. So this is the indigo phenomenon, the indigo children, who perhaps are the new species of humanity, maybe based on different DNA, that are able to tap into the source field more effectively through perhaps enhancement of their DNA or their pineal. Perhaps it's an evolution within the pineal gland itself. The age of Aquarius is another description for this time, and it's supposed to be predicted to arrive July the 26th, 2014. So that's next year. So wait for it. Yeah, it's called The Way to Shambhala. Now, one of the ancient Greek scholars, Hipparchus, in 146 BC, used ancient Babylonian astronomy records to figure out a lot of this. The ancient Babylonian astronomers did their observations with incredible precision, with a wisdom and access to knowledge that we don't have even today. And there was another individual called Hermes, who wrote the Hermetic texts, which were a basis of much of the Greek and Roman knowledge. And the Asclepius was another individual. These heroes were venerated as godlike beings who perhaps were savants of the day. There's a phenomenon called Asclepius' lament, where there's a prediction about these end times and tribulations and suffering that we are all going through. Perhaps we're going through it right now in ways that we're not fully aware in our suffering. We're not always aware of our suffering. Hermes, according to Edgar Cayce, lived 12,000 years ago and was, in fact, the architect of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So he based his knowledge from the Babylonian information. It turns out that even in modern times, a lot of this knowledge has been carried forward into the building of the American Constitution, and the US dollar has a lot of the symbology of these ancient wisdoms. Much of the symbology of the pyramids is represented by the pineal and is on the American dollar and other inscriptions. The pyramid represents a kind of pineal gland. Because of its shape, and I want to talk about shape, the technology of shape, a little later. So this is all about Chapter 6, mythologies and prophecies that go back to almost prehistoric times. We're going to move on now to Chapter 7 and talk about the pyramids, this being a little pyramid example here. Is this something we wanted to have a little break and talk about some of our recent discoveries? In the last week, in fact, I had a booth at an innovation exhibition in Toronto, and I discovered at one of the other booths two universities were doing very important work in colloidal technology. One of them, University of Trent in Sarnia, Ontario, they have been doing work on silver, colloidal silver, and have come up with some astonishing discoveries that silver kills cancer cells, according to their studies. Do you have the website there, Gary?
We might have a slight look. There it is.
The conclusion of this study at Trent University is that SNPs, or silver nanoparticles, can cause death of cancer cells. It's called apoptosis of cancer cells, and reduce the metastasis, which is the spread of cancer to other tissues like lung, bones, brain, which is actually a more serious consequence. So it would certainly be wise for all of us to be taking colloidal silver as a preventive, because there are cancer cells floating around our body all the time, and we wouldn't want them to incubate into a full-blown tumor. So and silver is so innocuous and harmless, and we need only a small amount, trace amounts of 350 micrograms a day. So it's a no-brainer that we should be taking things like that as preventives. According to their work, the tumors can be reduced in size by up to 58% in 8 days. This was a study done on mice and other small animals.
So, John, there's a problem with displaying the computer on the screen right now.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, well, I can.
Having said this, I'm on Adam Noble's.
Perhaps you could read out the website, the URL for people to go on, because for any of you who are deeply involved and concerned about this right now, you might want to check this out and do your due diligence. What's the URL?
Okay, we are on the peterboroughexaminer.com, and this is a slash, so the peterborough.com/2013/05/21/young-scientist. Young scientist. And this is about Adam Noble.
Adam Noble. All right, I did a Google search with silver cure for cancer, and this came up. And also another one from England, from the Daily Mail, another university in England.
Yeah, and if you Google silver bullet for cancer on Mail Online, you'll find some piece of research done by University of Leeds.
So that's very important. If you want, if you have trouble finding it, just send us an email, info@biophysica.com.
Do you want me to read a little bit from this?
Okay, please. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So it says here that researchers from the University of Leeds conducted lab tests which exposed breast and colon cancer cells to various silver-based chemicals over a 6-day period. The results, published in journal Dalton Transactions, shows that these silver compounds, not unlike the product that your technology produces, were as effective as cisplatin, which is apparently the chemotherapy.
Yeah, it's a platinum-based molecule for chemotherapy, but it has some side effects which the silver does not have. Yeah.
At killing cancer with potentially fewer side effects.
Yeah, yeah.
And thank you.
Well, this is very important information that we came across. I came across at this innovation exhibition last week. Something else I came across with another university there was the use of certain pulses. I use pulses in making my colloidal silver to create a better zeta potential, which is the charge on particles that cause them to repel each other and have a long-term residual potency of my colloidal silver. So I use high frequencies to generate that. But this lab had done work showing that unique pulse waveforms gave particle sizes of less than 5 nanometers. And when you have that, you got a very high quality colloidal silver of small nanoparticles that can immobilize some of the vicious small viruses and the prions or prions that cause mad cow disease and other brain disorders that we think may be causative in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and MS. Yeah. So was that all that we wanted to cover?
It looks good, but I wanted to ask you about the importance of size, both particle size and the size of the electrodes that you use they're using your technology to create colloidal silver.
Yeah, more and more people are learning about silver water, silver mineral water, and other mineral waters like zinc, magnesium, iron, and copper, and are making their own at home using crude little instruments that generally make poor quality colloidal suspension that could still be quite effective against big bacteria, but not so effective against viruses that can cause cancer, for example. Parasites are known to cause cancer. So it's important to have a good quality colloidal generator to use. And one of the important properties is to have a large area of electrode. That way the milliamps per square inch, so the current density, is minimal so that we get a small nanoparticle. When you overdrive your electrodes, if you use little wires and rods and put in, say, 50 milliamps, you're overdriving the electrode, and you're going to get very large, relatively ineffective particles. Yep.
Okay.
So we'll move on now to Chapter 7 on the pyramids and the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Great Pyramid was built of almost 2 million blocks of two kinds of stones. One was granite, and the other was a sedimentary limestone. Limestone is sedimentary and has a lot of calcium in it. Granite, as you may know, is an alloy of 3 elements: quartz, mica, and feldspar. It's an alloy of 3 elements. It's very dense, very hard, particularly because of the quartz. And these blocks, some of them weighed up to 70 tons, which is far beyond the capability of any modern crane to lift a block of that size. So how were they able to cut them and move them from the quarries quite a few miles to their location? That's a mystery that has not been discovered yet. And also the platform upon which the pyramid was based had to be leveled right down to the granite, right down to the base plate of the plane where it was blocked. The bedrock is called. The bedrock was leveled flat to a precision of ½ an inch all over the area. Also of importance was the location. They just didn't build it in any random spot. The location was geographically, geologically, astronomically important and significant, related to the latitude and longitude of the planet. And the details are mentioned in the book about that.
It has to do with these 2 Earth meridians are the ones that cover the largest land mass. So this point is unique in the world, as there's no other point like it. Both the longitudinal and both meridians cover the largest land masses out of all other possibilities. So no accident here. Also, the pyramid was lined up and oriented with regard to the north-south. It lines up with the true north with very, very high precision. So how did they know where the true north was? So that's not the magnetic north?
No, no, this would be the geographical north, yeah. The axis of the spinning of the planet. How did they know where that was? And they wouldn't have had compasses back then, although they had lodestone, which is a magnetic stone, but they wouldn't have had a magnetic compass.
So what kind of technology do you need to polish or to work with granite, to shape granite?
Well, granite is mostly quartz, so you would need quartz on quartz. You would need a very hard material to rub into and cut into granite. Very, very hard alloy. Very hard alloy.
Maybe diamond-based kind of.
Well, ideally, yeah. Ideally, the height of the Great Pyramid is 5,449, almost 5,500 inches high. And it had external casing stones sloping up the sides. And amazingly, these stones weren't just thin facades. These were big slabs 8 feet thick that were on their side, lying up the side wall of the pyramids. And each of these casing stones weighed around 16 tons. So how did they lift them, and how did they lift them up and up and up to the highest level of the pyramid? Interestingly, the top of the pyramid is not pointed as many depictions of a pyramid would display. The top of the pyramid was flat. There was a little flat platform. So in fact, the pyramid has 6 faces. 4 on the side, at bottom, and that small one on the top. And 6, the number 6 corresponds to incompletion. The number 5, which would be the addition of the top, which is called the capstone, which is a tiny little pyramid, which was never completed. So they left it incomplete, waiting for completion, which would now be happening on this 26,000 equinox cycle. These casing stones, as they're called, on the side, were carved to fit together with a spacing of 1/50th of an inch, which is narrower than a fingernail, though they fitted together with great precision and accuracy, and they were held together by a cement or mortar that far surpasses anything we have today. And the precision of the fitting together was more precise than the tiles on a NASA space shuttle. The casements, in fact, were inscribed with mysterious characters, and they were reported, the casements are reported throughout history. They were removed earlier in the history because there was a big earthquake in Egypt. They were lost and fell off due to an earthquake that commenced in 1356. There was a series of earthquakes happened around that time, and a lot of these casement stones fell in on top of each other. And then when the population wanted to rebuild their homes, they used these casement stones and broke them up and used them as excellent building materials for their homes. And then it was only in 1840 that excavators discovered the stones. They dug down and found them and verified that these casement stones of limestone, and the limestone was a very white, pure, shiny, high quality material. We're going to talk a bit now about the inside of the pyramid. There are 3 chambers in the pyramid, the most important being the king's chamber. The floor of the king's chamber has granite stones of different sizes and shapes, and they are laid down on a flat floor, and the shapes of these encode information about the planets and their positions and their orbits. So they were great astronomers, and this was a record of their astronomical observations in that observation room. Also in that king's chamber there was a coffin or sarcophagus. An open coffin. Sarcophagus in Greek means, sarkos means flesh, and phagos means eating. So sarcophagus is that which digests the dead body and allows it to decay safely and in a proper manner.
I hear that it's too big to have been brought in.
That's right, a good point. Yes, that's right. It was too big to have been brought in through the entrance into the king's chamber, so it was built in right from the beginning, before the pyramids were completed. And the sarcophagus is interesting itself. It's a block of brown granite, solid brown granite, weighing 3 tons, and the inside of it was carved out. And you know, we said how difficult it is to carve into granite, but this was carved using drills of a highly advanced technology. And they were not diamond. They were not diamond drills. They were maybe they were energetic drills of some kind of energetic vortex that was able to cut through the granite. and there was no lid on the coffin. And this indicated that there would be no more death in the open coffin. Interestingly, in the Vatican, they have a similar sarcophagus near the Pinecone monument, indicating the same thing, no more death, which indicates sort of reincarnation, that life goes on even though our physicality ends.
John, this is a great segue to our commercial break.
Okay, yeah, this would be a good point to break, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you. Biophysica Inc. and a biomedical engineer. We make the world's most advanced colloidal generators for domestic and industrial quantities of mineralized waters. Many bottling plants worldwide use our generators to make colloidal silver, the world's most life-saving antimicrobial supplement, as well as colloidal zinc, gold, magnesium, copper, iron, etc. Biophysica advanced generators produce the smallest nanomolecules to ensure potency against the smallest, most vicious viruses. A Biophysica colloidal generator will give your family the best quality colloidal silver for many years, quickly, cheaply, and easily. Contact us at biophysica.com or call us at 416-636-5804. Okay, we're back now. Thank you. Thank you, Hugh. We're talking about the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber. From each of those, there were two air shafts going up on opposite sides of each other, going up at angles, and the angle of those air shafts pointed to certain stars, including the star Sirius, that many of you are familiar from. Some of you came from and you're familiar with. Yeah. Okay, here we are with an example. Can you tell us a little bit about this, Gary?
What we see here is the height of the pyramid is 480 feet. It shows the limestone casing removed. In the middle you see the weight relieving chambers, the King Chamber right there in the middle. Going up to it, the Grand Gallery, ascending passage, an entrance that goes both to a descending passage and up to the King's Chamber. Oh, and there's also the Queen's Chamber.
There are three chambers altogether, yes.
Yeah, slightly below.
What about that one underground? Because there's a lot of history about the water table in Egypt at that time. So this underground chamber would have got flooded, and that water played an important part in the energetics, the subtle energy and the power of the pyramid. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, right, okay. Now, these air shafts pointed up to certain stars, and Pole Star and Sirius, only in certain years, one being 2500 BC, and again 10,500 BC, when the construction commenced in 10,500 BC. So, here are some measurements about the pyramid. The perimeter, or the total length around the base, is 100 times 366 inches, or 365.2422 inches, which is exactly the length of 1 year. And there's a lot of controversy and argument back 200 years ago about the definition of an inch and how they would define an inch. Actually, one of the early definitions of an inch was in the time of Henry VIII. The courtiers came and asked him, "Sire, what is the length of an inch?" And he held up his thumb and said, "There it is." However, we have more scientific methods, and the ideal method was a fraction of the distance from one pole to the other, from the north to the south pole. And the pole-to-pole Earth diameter is almost 8,000 miles. It's precisely 7898.78 miles. Now, the pyramid builders must have known this. They must have known this true dimension with considerable accuracy that we only now know because of satellite measurements and observations. And the pyramid inch is 1/500,000,000th of an Earth diameter to the accuracy of many decimal places. And this was verified by a satellite in 1957, one of the early satellites. The diagonal of the pyramid from the top to one of the base corners is 25,826.4 pyramid inches. And that turns out to be exactly the length of the precession of the equinox in years, 25826.4.
So it's not 25920?
Well, this is what he says here, so we'll have to look into this. And those of you who are interested, look into it more deeply. Yeah. And the reason for this was drawing our attention to the importance of this precession of the equinoxes, in that it was a prediction of the New Age and the tribulations, the end times and the beginning of the New Age, which they regarded as something of very great significance for humanity. And the beginning of the Golden Age, and the Golden Age of Pineal Awakening, which hopefully we'll be getting next year in July 2014.
Absolutely.
All our pineals will be awakened.
I think it's just about guaranteed.
It's about time, eh?
Yeah, it is about time.
Well, considering all the dumbing down of our pineals that have been going on and still going on, particularly with, you mentioned before, fluoride in our water. Fluoride is a pineal poison. So we are, in fact, now in our community looking, and we've just ordered special filters to filter out chloride and chlorine, which causes cancer, and fluoride, which causes cancer, and pineal. What was the name of the filter we just ordered today?
It's called Berkey.
A Berkey. We just ordered a Berkey filter. So.
And we will become affiliates
of the Berkey filter.
So there'll be a filter. There'll be a link on our website to the Berkey products.
Yeah.
That apparently will filter out, among other things, fluoride 100%.
Now, moving on to modern times, the US dollar bill shows the missing triangular capstone on the dollar bill. It's like the completion part that goes from incompletion of 6 to 5. And there's an eye inside the Great Seal of Independence, which was done in 1776, at the beginning of the US Republic. And this is an ancient Masonic symbol. And the eye symbolizes the all-seeing eye of God, acting through the eye of the pineal. Like the eye in the pineal represents the eye of God and has a direct connection to the hyperspace dimensions.
I'm going to show the dollar bill for a second.
Yeah, good, please, good.
There we go.
Can you blow it up a little bit, you think?
I think I can. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah, there it is. So there's the capstone waiting to go on the pyramid to complete and commence the Golden Age, and the eye of the pineal looking through and promising us an area of superhuman species, and the new human who will appear from July the 14th.
Do we know what it actually says here in Latin? Or?
Yes, there's some description of it in David Wilcock's book, what the Latin means, and it's more of this reinforcing these statements and predictions about the forthcoming Golden Age. Moving on now, there's a discussion of prophetic women throughout history called Sibyls or Sibula, and there was one famous Sibyl, a prophetic woman who lived around what was then Naples. She was called Sibyl of Cumae, which is a district near Naples, and she wrote the Sibylline records. Now, around Naples, as you may know, and I visited there near Pompeii, it's just at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that's still fairly active, and it's been predicted it's going to erupt any day. They're waiting for it to erupt now. But the mountain of Vesuvius is full of different caverns where lava once flowed. And one of those caverns is where this Sibyl, prophetess, lived in this cavern. And this cavern had about 100 entrances, and she would write prophecies and put them at all the entrances. So she became very famous because all of her prophecies would come true.
Would the Delphi Oracle be one of those?
Delphi is an island just off Mykonos, which I visited also many years ago, and there is there are many monuments, including one to Cybele. Yeah. And that's one of the many oracles around the world. There were 10 of them. One was on Delphi, and one was in the Naples area. And interestingly, this woman was living in the cave, and she would get these insights through her pineal gland, these like channeled information, but it was facilitated by a hallucinogenic substance. It was ethylene gas that came seeping through the rocks of the volcanic mountain. And the ethylene gas had a hallucinogenic effect, which liberated her ability. It was like an entheogenic drug. Entheogenic meaning it brings God in through our pineal, brings divine information. Or psycholytic, another word, which I learned when I studied psycholytic therapy with Dr. Stan Grof. Back in the 60s and 70s, I did a workshop, 2 workshops with Stan Grof on psycholytic and entheogenic therapies using a drug called ketamine back then, which was legal and not legal now. So there are many substances which will liberate our pineal gland to make it more to amplify its sensitivity and make it as more able to channel into the information of the hyperspace akashic dimensions. The ethylene theory has true because it's been found in the local water. There's a high incidence of ethylene, which has a narcotic effect. And also, she's reported by Virgil, who wrote the book The Aeneid. She also ingested bay leaves, bay laurel juice, as well as inhaling the ethylene gas. There's a story of how she came to the early king of Rome when Rome was being founded, and she brought all of her writings. Nine writings, and she wanted 9 bags of gold for the writings, and the King Tarquin, refused, and so she burned, and this is what happened a couple of times, she burned 6 of the books, leaving only 3, and ultimately Tarquin agreed and bought the 3 books for the 9 bags of gold, and these Sibylline records were protected and valued very highly throughout Roman history because it prophesied very accurately some of the later history, like Hannibal, who invaded Europe from Carthage, the Carthaginians. It predicted him by name, and it predicted the Emperor Constantine by name. So this is a very accurate channeling source.
Did they say that the Roman Empire was punished for the king's burning of the for his not refusing to accept her offer?
Subsequent rulers were. One ruler copied the records and then was attacked and executed for daring to copy the Sibylline records. It turns out that later on Virgil was allowed to copy them, and it's a good thing he did because there was a fire in the Temple of Jupiter in around 500 BC. In 83 AD. The temple burned down with the record. So Virgil's copy was all that was left. Moving on to another few notes about the U.S. government. Founders were mostly Masons, and they were assisted and directed and perhaps controlled by a secret cabal, a group in Europe, whose signature was the Great Seal and the unfinished pyramid. So this was brought over from Europe and controlled and directed by this cabal, who probably still exists today under a different name. The eagle on this seal represents the phoenix, The phoenix is the bird that rises out of destruction and is reborn again. This secret cabal in Europe originated from Sumer, Babylon, and Egypt, and used secret taboo techniques to awaken the pineal gland, and still do. They have their secret techniques to awaken the Kundalini. Yeah.
So they emerged out of the same era when the pyramids were built?
It would appear so, yeah. Oh yeah, it would appear so, Babylon. So there was perhaps a secret cabal way back, maybe from Atlantean, Lemurian times, that all throughout there's the secret individuals who regard themselves as demigods, or half human, half divine beings.
But maybe they were not so secret then, but just gradually became secret.
Well,
maybe they were the rulers.
Well, there was so much superstition in those days, they had to be very careful. Today too, yeah. So talking about awakening the pineal and the Kundalini, as I mentioned, resides in the sacral chakra. And if it's not, if you want to...
Sorry, where is the sacral chakra?
Well, the sacral chakra is the root chakra. Okay. The root chakra. And the principle is, if you want to get to the top, start at the bottom.
So you gradually raise the energy?
Yeah, you can't start up here working on your higher chakras if you're blocked down in the lower chakras, you know. The foundation, the base plate of all of our energy. Yeah. Oh yeah, the back of the US dollar has a prophecy, an exact translation of their Sibylline text, translated in 1882, describing the New Age, the forthcoming New Age, and the birth of a golden boy. This was like the Messiah or the Kalki, and that the golden boy may not be, maybe one, it's unlikely it's one individual, or a group of individuals who had this golden advanced capability, a Messiah-like capability, and a new race of human beings. And this would be like the return of the gods through us. We would be more representative of the higher dimensions acting through us, because it appears that there are major barriers between the dimensions. The interdimensional barriers are very difficult to step across. That's why there are very few true psychics. And even those have been studied by scientists and found generally the best are at best only 80% accurate, which means they're 20% wrong. However, to be fair, who is it who's doing the testing? If you're doing the testing from a position of skepticism, you won't get positive results. If you come from a position of positive intention, then you can get very high positive results.
Is this like the observer effect?
Exactly, the observer effect and the power of intention. You contaminate and influence the results that you're going to get. And we know from the work of Professor Tiller, for example, that the circumstances, the place, the context is extremely important in giving rise to a successful outcome or not. The final part of this chapter on page 135 is about the Illuminati. The question is, who is running this world? Is it their governments? Is it our prime ministers and presidents and the Queen? Who's running the world? And who's running them? And from what dimensions is it happening?
I'm wondering if the all-seeing eye at the tip of the pyramid was kind of represents the Illuminati, right?
That's a good point. Yes, it I'm sure it does. So that's just the focus of their Masonic efforts is to open their pineal and be the superior beings to lead the world into peace and tranquility and health and happiness. So their motivation may be of the highest, and it undoubtedly is, but there is always, corruption raises its ugly head, so we have to always have our corruption detectors aware. And
I wanted to say that the pyramid also in other contexts represents a top-heavy structure, one person or a small group of people running the show. And basically controlling the masses.
That's right, the 1% control, yeah.
So,
I think it's more benign than I think it truly represents an awakening, and the efforts of those who are running the show to hasten and support and nourish that awakening. And this is what we're doing in this show. This is why we're here,
of course,
Gary and I, to nourish and push that awakening, to push the wave of the awakening of the pineal. So let's see if there's anything else before we complete that. We should become more aware of the human tendency to corruption and addiction. It's fundamental to us all, our shadow self, that we must rise above. And a strong person is one who knows their weaknesses and who knows their shadow. Have your shadow behind you, otherwise it's in front of you. Likewise, your suffering. Have your suffering behind you, not in front of you. And addiction is one of the greatest problems about this. We humans and even animals are addicted to greed, to fear even. We are addicted to some of the most bitter substances and experiences. Coffee and nicotine are among the most bitter substances, yet the most addictive. And another addiction is the addiction of control, addiction to control over others, and the addiction to control over nature, which is why you see corporations damaging and raping the soil and the Amazonian forest, because of their greed and desire to control nature. These are control addicts and parasitic to our society. They are being called the tapeworms that eat and get larger and larger, ending up in the death of the host and the worm. So that's all on that chapter. I did move on to chapter 8, which is also very much about the pyramid. So we have about 5 minutes left to move on to chapter 8. And many people have made models of the pyramid shape. I'm becoming aware now of the importance of shapes. Yeah, the shapes and the solids, which we'll cover in chapter 15, the Platonic solids, the decahedrons, dodecahedrons, and all of that, that these specific shapes, they call them sacred geometry, have the ability to resonate, morphic resonating with shapes that are in the subquantum dimensions of hyperspace. So that's why I think that the pyramid is a shape. There's an interconnectedness, a non-locality through shape. And I'm convinced of this because if you read, I read the book, the autobiography of Daniel Tammet, the young boy savant, who wrote an autobiography, and he was the one who could recite pi to 25,500 decimal places and was taken to the Mayo Clinic to do so. And he was asked, how do you get the next number? Do you calculate it? No, he couldn't. No, not even a computer could calculate it that fast. He was given the number in the form of a shape, a three-dimensional shape. So this shape is the language of the higher dimensions that communicates with us, and we can communicate back with shapes and patterns that open our keys to unlock our connection with the higher dimensions, to bring about healing and all of the other benefits that we are heir to and we have a right as our heritage. So moving on, it seems that some research has been done in the King's Chamber that we're able to preserve dead bodies of animals and preserve food. So there's an energy field in the King's Chamber, perhaps a focal point of the pyramid. And many have tried to, I've done and repeated that experiment. And built pyramids. For example, one in Prague, a man called Karol Drubal in Prague repeated the experiment in 1959, and he was the one who reported on like dull razor blades became sharp. That was a famous experiment. Shall we look at? I think Gary has a picture.
This is the Russian pyramid.
A Russian. Okay. Can we see that one, maybe? Yeah. Now that is, she is more elongated. The reason being that it has a higher peak, and they've found that a higher peak pyramid has stronger results. So it's not, doesn't always have to be based on the golden mean, phi. the taller, this is like the spire of a cathedral. And this is why cathedrals have a spire. It's a geometric pattern. It's like a quantum computer connecting with the hyperspace dimensions. Now, in Prague, this pyramid was made of cardboard. And others have been made with PVC, polyvinyl chloride tubing, plastic tubing, and fiberglass on the side walls, and get equally good results. It's the shape that matters, not so much the material. But you mustn't use metal. There must be no metal in it. And
so was there no metal in Giza, in the pyramids, in those pyramids? I guess it was all stone.
No, there's no metal. But there is metal in the Washington Monument, which is a similar pyramidal-like structure, and it could explain it has no power because of the metal that drains off the energy, the morphic energy. So any of us can build small pyramids using very inexpensive material. Even styrofoam has been used successfully. Just the shape is the shape that matters. A Russian scientist in 2001 used a scanning electron microscope to prove that the pyramid could change the molecular structure of razor blade, but only if they were in an east-west position, not in a north-south position. So here we have geographical position as another important parameter in our work. And interestingly, when I was studying radionics and the work of Dr. Abrams in California, one of the early radionic pioneers, he discovered radionics through percussing the abdomen of a patient, and they got diagnostic results only if the patient was facing west. So this is something for you New Age practitioners to be aware of. If you're not getting results, it could be you're not facing west. So to look into that.
Orientation.
Orientation is important. Get your compass out and make sure you're facing west. And maybe in all of the things that are energetic, including lovemaking and cooking, maybe all of these spiritual activities should be done with due concern with these these morphic parameters. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, how is it that these parameters, these shapes work? Is it because they have an inherent connectionness, or is it that they are able to amplify our pineal? Are we the agents who are our efforts are being amplified by these sacred geometric shapes? I don't know the answer to that. You know.
Maybe we'll have the answer on our next show.
Well, as we read further into this book, we will learn more about these things. And let me remind you again about this other great book, Encyclopedic. Has a lot of information not contained in the Wilcock book. So I would recommend the Life Force, the Scientific Basis. We're just about finished now.
May I suggest that we will summarize Chapter 8 next time?
Yes.
Spend a few moments on this. I think it's a really important chapter.
It's a very important chapter.
It has been my favorite chapter in the book.
Oh yeah. And then Chapter 9 goes on to a completely different topic, which was DNA. So we'll do a thorough going over of Chapter 8, and we'll move into a bit of Chapter 9 on DNA. So thank you all for watching. We'll have a great 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
My name is John Stewart, President of Biophysica, Inc., and a biomedical engineer. We make the world's most advanced colloidal generators for domestic and industrial quantities of mineralized waters. Many bottling plants worldwide use our generators to make colloidal silver, the world's most life-saving antimicrobial supplement, as well as colloidal zinc, gold, magnesium, copper, iron, etc. Biophysica advanced generators produce the smallest nanomolecules to ensure potency against the smallest, most vicious viruses. A Biophysica colloidal generator will give your family the best quality colloidal silver for many years, quickly, cheaply, and easily. Contact us at biophysica.com or call us at 416-636-5804. My name is John Stewart, President of Biophysica, Inc., and a biomedical engineer. We make the world's most advanced colloidal generators for domestic and industrial quantities of mineralized waters. Many bottling plants worldwide use our generators to make colloidal silver, the world's most life-saving antimicrobial supplement, as well as colloidal zinc, gold, magnesium, copper, iron, etc.